Alright, good afternoon everybody from White Blaze. This is Gambit here. As promised, I would do a jerky prep video. What we have here is a private selection Angus Eye of Round roast. There are several different kinds of roast. This is the one that old Philip down at Kroger's has always suggested and that I've had good results out of. Cut at 1/4 inch strips. There's a good cut right there for you to see. What that allows is enough meat in the thickness so that once you dehydrate it, it's still got some tenderness to it. If you cut it too thin, then what seems to happen is the meat dries out pretty quick. What I usually do is 1 tablespoon of red cayenne pepper per pound that I'm going to be dehydrating. So we've got just under 6 pounds of meat here. So I did 6 tablespoons of cayenne. It's about what 6 looks like there. And then for about every 3 to 4 pounds of meat, I use a bottle of Dale's original seasoning. For those of you out there looking for a low sodium, they do have a low sodium, but it's not the same. As you see, that's very liquidy, and when you get the low sodium, it's more of an A1 type consistency, and you see how watery that is, and that's what you want out of a marinade, because the dehydrator does a very good job of pulling the water out of this, whereas it doesn't the low sodium. I did not have as good of a result out of the low sodium, so I stick with that. As well, obviously, salt helps cure meat, and so it just, I guess theoretically will hold longer with a higher sodium level. So what we're going to do, is cut this open. Alright, so when we look at this, right off the get-go, you can ruin it if the butcher cutting it doesn't know what he's doing. I always ask for the main butcher, as I call him, Philip, where I live out, because I know that he's going to cut it correctly. If he cuts it incorrectly on this grain, then it automatically starts screwing up the jerky. So when we pull this apart, we want to cut this against the grain now, because as you have your strips, you want to, when you pull your teeth against the strip, for it to pull off easily. Otherwise, you see people eating jerky and it's wearing their jaw out. The reason why is because they cut it the wrong way on a strip. So once we find out which way to cut this, then we're going to make our strips. I'm finding that it's hard to do some of this one-handed. So I'm going to cut some, and then I'll do the second iteration of the video. Alright, so now we've found the grain, and we have cut it into what I call fajita style strips. And one thing that you can do if you're having trouble finding the grain is to hold the piece like you would, like you're stretching a rubber glove out, and then just put your finger through it. Okay, and you can see the grain as you can continue to pull that apart and see which way the grain's going, and then the hole that it makes, you can just cut perpendicular to that and get the correct grain. And it's not a science, you just want it to, you can see through there the grain, you just want to cut against that. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of this up, and here's something that you might run into. The butcher's going to come to the end of the butt at some point in the cut, and that's going to result in one piece that, as a lot of people would call like the shoulder, where it's much thicker than your normal size piece. And what I do there is I cut those into much shorter thicknesses than what I normally do. They come out more square than everything else, but once it's been in the dryer, it won't be an issue, but you can see the difference there between the shoulder cut piece and a normal piece. Alright, now we have it all cut up into strips. I'm not for sure if all of this is going to fit into this bag, but we're going to try. You can see the cayenne floating down in there. I wanted to give a forewarning that in the bottom of the Dale's bottle, if you don't shake it up really well before you pour it in, then you're going to get a lot of the seasoning stuck down there like a gunk. I just forgot to shake it. I put about a quarter cup of water in a bottle, shook it around, and then just dumped it in there. That's all this is a water-based marinade anyway. So what we're going to do is we're going to just put all of this into the bag. Once I get that all full, then we're going to disperse the marinade into the bag the best we can, shake it around, and it'll be time to go into the fridge. Alright, as we can see, this is a very full bag, 1 gallon bag of beef jerky strips. You want to make sure that the zipper is zipped very well, because it is going to be sitting like this in the fridge overnight and could have some permeation through that zipper. So when I'm doing a bag this full, what I like to do is just take a cookie sheet with a old towel on it, lay that on top of there, and then if I do get any dripping out or a spill, then at least it's better contained than what it was. We just take that, we're going to put it in the fridge. We're going to let that sit for at least 6 or 7 hours. Usually like to do this in the morning and then that night, so you know, a good 12 hours of sitting, but 7's more than enough, and we'll get this in the dehydrator tonight, let it cook overnight while we're at home. The next morning before we go to work, we'll check it, make sure that it's good to go, and if it needs a little more time, then we can add that time to the dehydrator on a cool enough level that we're not going to overcook the meat. Alright, Gambit back here with the last stage of making the beef jerky. We let that sit overnight. We've pulled it out. I flipped it several times throughout the process of it marinating. Just as the liquid soaks through the meat to the bottom, you flip it over. I've just flipped this and let it soak back through again so everything gets as even as possible. I don't know if you would... Yeah, you can see the flakes of cayenne in there. I'll go ahead and show you the dehydrator. This is the Excalibur. I don't know the exact model anymore, but it's a 9 tray. It's got a glass door to the front of it. It has, well, I've already got the time set up. So our first time is for 155 degrees for 7 hours, and then it drops down to more of a warm fan temperature of 100 degrees for 2 hours. That really just buys us more time of slowing down the process while we're away until we can get back to it or wake up in the morning to check the process and see if our jerky is complete or not. At 100 degrees, it's kind of hard to mess it up. It's just going to prolong the curing process, or the drying process, excuse me. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to dump this into the bowl because it's easier to work with, and it's kind of a messy process. And we're going to take our tray, and I just set this on that, so because you're going to get some dripping down below it, and then see how many of these racks we fill up. And once I've done that, I'll be back and we'll start it. Alright folks, we've loaded up the dehydrator, and it looks like we ended up with That's what it looks like. Ended up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 6.5 trays. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this crushed red pepper, and one tray at a time I'm going to pull it back out and just give all of these a light sprinkle of crushed red pepper, which will dry to the meat as it is dehydrating. So after I do that, I will start it up. Alright, I do a little more sprinkling than what I expect to be on there, because as it's in the bag, once it's dehydrated, a lot of it will flake off and be left at the end. So I go a little heavy on that. That's the last one. I just put the door on. And we'll start it up. Alright, welcome back everybody. It's the day after the nighttime dehydration that I did. Went to work today, just let this sit in the dehydrator while I was at work, and I like to do that. I don't like to bag it up, for one, when it's hot, and I also just like to let it come back down to room temperature before I bag it. That reduces any sort of condensation in the bag. The only thing I'm not going to be able to show that's explainable by this is I like to put a couple sheets of paper towels in the packaging if that is vacuum sealing or if it's just in the Ziploc. This is for my personal use, so I'm just going to keep it in the Ziploc because it'll only last for a couple weeks. So this is what we're looking at when we're done. Maybe hard to really do with one hand, but this came out pretty good. You can bend it and it doesn't crackle, and it's still got some good formation to it, which I like. I don't like it to be real crunchy. It's got a little bit of not really crunch, but you can hear the tear, which is fine. Tastes pretty good. So I'll go ahead and bag all of this up. Like I say, a lot of that red pepper flake, it looks a little over the top, but a lot of it will fall off, be left in the bottom of the bag when I'm done. So thanks everybody for watching. I enjoyed putting this together for you, and see you all on the trail.